So in this video, I wanted to talk about creating your very own happiness plan, a little plan for your happiness to up the everyday happiness in your life and also start minimizing those things that you do that are taking away from your happiness. So your happiness plan is like a deep dive into how to create a happier life in the form of a 5-page workbook, which you can get for free using the link in the description below. We're really focusing on your everyday habits, your everyday behaviors, because as that quote goes, how we spend our days is of course how we spend our lives, and there is so much truth to that. I really wanted this video to give you some actionable takeaways. So like by the end of this, you will have a bunch of actions that you can take pretty much straight away to up the happiness in your life. So this is actually the first video in 4 of the Intentional Life Plan Challenge. So this is a challenge where you get intentional, you're creating a little plan for your life, you're doing a bit of a reset before 2020 comes along. There's gonna be some deep dive interactive videos. Like this is absolutely like get a cup of tea, take a seat kind of material. I'm very excited for it. So step 1 in creating your happiness plan is a bit of reflection. So this is a literal first step of how to get intentional about your days. I always say reflection plus action is like so important. This is the reflection part. Even if you just do this part of the happiness plan, like you will be better off. So what you want to do is you want to actually start brain dumping like a big list of all of the behaviors and the habits that you've done in the past week or 2 of your life. So literally just zoom in and think back on the last week. So you stayed up late one night to watch a TV show, you scrolled through Instagram for 3 hours, you did a bit of journaling, you went on a walk, you worked out at home, went to the gym. So you're really not thinking of standout events, you're just thinking through like your everyday little things that you do. Then what you want to do is actually sort these things into 2 different categories. You've got the good and you've got the bad. So in the good column, you want to chuck the stuff that you find lifts you up, that feels good while you're doing it and also feels good after you're doing it, and that's really important. So maybe like going for a walk or doing a workout, and then you have the bad column. So that's for the stuff that sort of brings you down, that you find often doesn't feel good when you do it and often doesn't feel good after you do it, but somehow you keep on doing it. So things like scrolling through Instagram or maybe binge watching Netflix, those are the kind of things that might, depending on who you are, fit into your bad column. So a lot of the things that might start to come out when you're creating these lists are things that you might have already realized. Like you might have already known that like, hey, scrolling through Instagram doesn't really add to my happiness. But by doing this, by getting it down on paper, you're acknowledging it as a real problem, as something to work on, that your brain can then start working on in the background, even if it's in your subconscious. So the next thing that you're going to do with your newly created lists is to start by minimizing the negative. So in any way possible. So you want to start by looking at your bad column and you want to figure out which of those habits, behaviors are having the most negative impact on your life. So which habits are causing you the most frustration, the most annoyance, the most sadness, the most procrastination? Now we are going to create a plan to minimize or get rid of those bad habits. The first thing that you want to think about real quick is every bad habit needs a replacement. So if you spend 4 hours scrolling on Instagram at night and then you try to get rid of it and don't replace it, you're going to be very bored and you're going to end up scrolling on Instagram again. So you do want to think of a replacement habit for those habits that you're trying to minimize. Then you want to start brainstorming tangible actions, things that you can really do to minimize these negative habits in your life. And I have 3 questions for you that are going to help you to do that. So the first question is, how can you make this behavior way harder for you to do? So when I say make a habit harder to do, all I really mean is to add steps in between you and that habit. So right now, you and Instagram scrolling, there might be like one little jump, like one little click of the phone and then you're on Instagram. What you want to do is add like 10 jumps in between you and Instagram. So there are often a lot of ways that you can add steps between you and a habit. So with the example of Instagram scrolling, you might move the app to another screen or even delete the app. That creates like a whole step of having to download the app, which is painful. You might change the password, give it to your partner, so that you have to ask them for a password every time you go on Instagram, a la James Clear. There are now way more steps between you and Instagram, so it's far less likely that you're going to go onto it. The second question is, how can you make this behavior far less likely to happen? So every behavior, bad habits, good habits, they all have triggers. Sometimes they're really obvious, like notifications on a phone, which is something that you can turn off. Sometimes they're less obvious, so things like getting bored, which can be fixed by figuring out other behaviors to replace your bad habits with, or other activities to fill your life with as well. The third question is, how can you make this behavior way less appealing? So for example, some people put their phone to grayscale so that when they scroll through Instagram, it's less interesting and they don't stick around for as long. You might just want to unfollow everyone except for like your 5 closest friends. So when you scroll through Instagram, it comes up with that little notification saying you're done, you've seen all of the things that you need to see, making it less appealing. So through asking yourself those questions, which are all on the worksheet, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of actions that you now need to take. So make sure that you actually do something about those actions. This is a challenge. So I would love to hear from you down in the description or the comments section below what action you took to minimize your negative behaviors today. Ooh, that sounded a bit cheesy, but you know what I mean. So the next step of your happiness plan is to increase the positive in your life. So you're kind of taking what you just did, but you're turning it on its head. So once again, you want to pick your top 1 to 2 players that were in the good column. You might even want to pick the habits that you're trying to replace your bad habits with. So these are good things that you're trying to introduce into your life more, good behaviors that lift you up during your days. Ideally, you do want to pick something that you already kind of do, but maybe you just want to do it a little bit more. So maybe you read a bit, but you want reading to now completely replace your bad Instagram habit. So we're going to go through the questions that I went through earlier, but we're actually going to completely turn them around. So how can you make this habit of, for example, reading far easier for you to do? So here's reading. You want to remove all the steps between you and reading. When you're doing this, you might actually want to write a list of the steps between you and your habit, and then start thinking through each step and think how you could minimize it or make it easier. So particularly with the habit of reading, maybe one of your steps is finding a book. If you're a non-fiction reader like me, then maybe you want to take notes on your book and you don't really have like a template going. So every time you kind of have to fluff around and figure out how you're going to do that. So then you could create a reading list so that you never have to think about what book to read. Maybe have pre-borrowed or pre-bought books and have a little template for your note taking, so that's not something that you have to think about. The next question that you want to ask yourself is, how can I make this habit far more likely to happen? So you want to actually increase the triggers that could cause you to perform whatever the habit is. For example, with reading books, maybe you actually want to turn on notifications for Goodreads. You want to sign up to some book lists. You want to follow some booktubers on Instagram. You want to make reading like an actual part of your life where you're seeing prompts to read all the time and suggestions for new books to read all the time. Then you want to ask yourself, how can I make this habit way more appealing to do? So maybe if your habit is to read, you use your iPad and it has like a really big glare on it. Getting a Kindle could be a good way to make your habit more appealing to do. Don't use buying gear or equipment as an excuse not to start a behavior. That can be a later down the line thing. Or maybe you could create like a cute little reading nook where every time you wanted to read, you could go into this really cozy space in your house. So the next step of your everyday happiness plan is to create your ideal day. So I've got a little timeline in the worksheet. The way that I really like to do this is to draw things out. I'm not a particularly good drawer, you're gonna see it on the screen. And with this, you wanna start planning in those activities that you've just gone over, where you've minimized the bad activities and you've added in the good. Just a note, this isn't like a perfect day exercise. You don't wanna do like your ideal day at like Disneyland. You wanna do your ideal day like tomorrow. So think through like, what time do you wake up? When do you do those habits that you've just gotten a bit more intentional about? How do you integrate them into your day? So the last step of creating your happiness plan is to actually take some action. So all those little action steps that you listed out earlier, start doing them. And if you take action, I want to hear about it in the comment section down below. I love hearing little things like this. If you liked this video, you are going to love tomorrow's video, which is all about getting intentional and simplifying your weeks. So I'm going to have a link to the playlist for the challenge on the screen and down in the description. As a little side note, there is something very exciting coming at the end of this challenge. Get ready for it. There'll be a little countdown in the comments section below. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you soon.